Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about Somerset Maugham's short story, The Man with the Scar, or The Man with a Scar. I've seen it both ways online. This is a video that was requested by someone who commented on the channel. So there's your periodic reminder that if there's a particular thing that you want me to do a video on, please let me know. If I have the time to do it, I will. Also, I think I'm pronouncing the name Maugham correctly, M-A-U-G-H-A-N. If I'm not, apologies, etc. to the estate of Somerset Maugham. So, The Man with the Scar is a very interesting short story, almost a piece of what we would now call flash fiction. Very, very short. It reminds me a lot of Hemingway, actually, in this sort of combination of fairly terse language, an exotic location set in a bar, etc., etc. There's a lot of Hemingway-esque elements here, but with, I think, a much more English sense of irony. The English are big into, a lot of English writers are big into irony, challenging expectations, etc., etc. So basically, the short story starts out with the speaker, the unidentified speaker, in a bar, or reflecting on having been in a bar in Guatemala? I think, yes. Yeah, so, sorry, I just checked it on my computer. So, reflecting on having been in a bar in Guatemala, and there's this very odd person who frequents the bar. He's a sort of large, tall and stout man, sort of like myself, I guess, with very small facial features, a very long scar across, running down his face from his temple to his chin, is what it says. And he sells lottery tickets. I put it in quotation marks because he attempts to sell lottery tickets, but no one ever buys, although people do sometimes buy him drinks. And so the friend that the narrator is at the bar with buys this man a drink, calls him General, and so the speaker asks who the guy is and what his story is, how he got the scar. And so the friend recounts that this guy's from Nicaragua. He had been a leader of a revolutionary movement that failed because they ran out of ammunition. And he was captured, and he was going to be executed with a group of friends by the Nicaraguan authorities. When they asked if he had any final requests, he said he wanted to see his wife one last time. She was waiting at the prison gates. So they agreed. Two guards took him outside, while they shot the other 4 condemned prisoners. So the 2 guards take him outside. His young, beautiful wife sees him, runs over to him in tears. He kisses her. Then he takes a knife that he's secreted in his shirt somehow, and he stabs her in the neck and kisses her again as she dies. The 2 guards are unable to stop him. He's too quick. He kills her too quickly. Then the warden of the prison basically says, "Why did you kill her?" And he says something to the effect of, "I killed her because I couldn't stand for her to live without me." Something like that. And the warden says, "That is the noblest and most beautiful sentiment that I've ever heard. Take my car, drive this guy to the border. We're gonna let him live. We can't execute such a noble fellow." So there's huge problems with this. We'll talk about that in just a second. But then the irony, the sort of English irony component of it is the very end. The narrator of the short story says, "Wow, that's quite a story, but how did he get his scar?" And the friend says, "Oh, he got that opening a bottle of ginger beer." And the narrator just ends with, "I never liked it." So we have this sort of excessive story of political violence and intrigue and murder and all this stuff. And then it just ends with, "Oh, yeah, he was opening a bottle of beer. And that horribly scarred his face." Not real clear how, but it's this banal ending that's 180-degree transition from the energy, the excitement, the suspense of most of this guy's story. And I mean, in this sense, it's a comic short story. Todd McGowan, who's a brilliant cultural theorist, psychoanalytic theorist, actually argues in his book "Only a Joke Can Save Us" that the key component of comedy is the juxtaposition of excess and lack. And we really see that in this story, because we have the sort of excessive adventure story, almost a sort of Boys Own Paper type adventure of the South American revolutionary fighting the government, and then he's going to be exiled, and there's a beautiful woman, and she's murdered, etc., etc. With the lack of, oh, he got this horrible scar in just this, like, day-to-day freak accident. So we've got those two things juxtaposed here, and the lack in the story of how he got the scar is contrasted with the excess of the story of his adventures. And so because they don't fit together, because they contrast one another, we have this moment of humor. But the other thing that really, really strikes me about The Man with the Scar is, oh, the gender politics here are bad. So problematic. The wife of this revolutionary is brought on basically just to be kissed and murdered. And I mean, I'm not that familiar with Latin American culture, Nicaraguan culture, but I think there's a long tradition of what's called machismo, which is very specifically tied to almost an ownership of women, a sort of once you're my woman, no one else can have you type attitude, and also violence against women. So hugely problematic from a contemporary feminist perspective, but that's essentially what we're kind of seeing here, is that the woman's role, both from this revolutionary, but also I think from Maugham himself as the writer of this story, the woman's role is to be sexualized as she's kissed, and to be murdered, and even to be sexualized in death, because again, this revolutionary kisses her as he's, like, after he has stabbed her in the neck. So it's hugely problematic that this female character exists only for those two capacities. She exists only as an object for the men in the story. And of course, the sort of additional element of this is the fact that the warden of this prison says that murdering her was such a noble gesture that he decides to give this revolutionary his life rather than executing him. Like, Murdering a woman should not be the thing that seems admirable. That seems like such an obvious statement that I shouldn't have to make it, but it's hugely problematic in this short story, because that's the attitude that he takes, and the characters all seem okay with this. The prison guards seem okay with it. The friend who's telling the story seems okay with it. The narrator of Mon's short story seems okay with it. It's a bad business. Don't murder women. Don't do it. Don't murder anybody, but don't murder women.